Welcome to Hey Therapist. I'm your host, Leslie Ross. With me is my producer, Jay Wesley Lindley. Let's get mental. All right. Okay, so today we are talking about boundaries. This has come up a lot in my work, so we're going to get to work boundaries, but a lot of people don't understand how to set proper boundaries, and they think that setting a boundary is a negative thing or you're being unreasonable or one of those situations. But really, a boundary is for your protection. And so, I was thinking about this, and an example that I came up with was, the other morning it was nice and fall-like weather. It was like 70 degrees outside instead of a heat index of 115. So it made me think about hunting weather because I do enjoy hunting. And I was thinking about, when I was thinking about boundaries, that popped into my mind because when the weather's nice and cool, we start turning our thoughts to fall activities. And so my boundary analogy for you is, let's say you're going out to hunt and you come across some land and it says posted no trespassing, private property, whatever it is. If you're someone that doesn't respect boundaries, you're going to walk on in. You're going to think, well, I'll just go right on the edge, or it's not going to matter. And, that sign is part of the boundary. So whatever you want is part of your boundary, but a boundary needs to go further. There needs to be some sort of action or consequence. So if that sign said posted no trespassing, no hunting, violators will be prosecuted, you may think twice, or you now know, if I cross this boundary, there could be something happen to me that is something I may not want to happen, because I just want to go in here and sit down for a little while and do whatever and do what I want. The consequences be damned. And when we have people who cross our boundaries or situations that cross our boundaries, it's kind of like that. It is the people are going to do what they want. Consequences be damned. And so, boundaries are really based on what we want, what our values are, what is important to us. And you may know what your boundaries are. You may have learned from past situations, past work experiences, past relationships, whatever it is. You may have learned what your boundaries are and what your expectations are and what you want from this relationship, this job, this family member, whatever it is. But you may not know what you want, or a situation may arise where something doesn't feel good to you, or you feel like someone is crossing a line and making you feel bad. The phone rings and you're like, oh, it's them again. They're just going to be so negative, or they're going to make comments about my body, or they're going to say these things that just make me feel not so good. And that's when you get to set a boundary. And when you're setting a boundary, you're not really looking to change that person, because other people's behaviors are way beyond our control. They're not anything that we can do anything about. How they react to our boundary, how they react to us, that's not really anything we can do anything about. What boundaries are about is what you want and need. So you want a different behavior from that person. So setting that boundary is a very personal thing to you. And when you set boundaries, especially if it's people close to you, especially if it's people that have gotten away with bad behavior in the past, then they may very well get upset with you. They may very well try to cut you off or stop talking to you, or make like your boundary is an unreasonable request. But if it's your boundary, it's not an unreasonable request. It's what you need. So, if someone is upset with you, then that's their issue. If you're being a toxic person, so when I'm talking about setting boundaries, I'm talking about setting healthy boundaries. Not you being a toxic person or a controlling person and saying, hey, if you even talk to someone from the opposite sex, I'm going to be mad at you, or I'm going to XYZ, I'm going to set you out, or we're not going to have sex, or whatever. That's toxic behavior. That you need to deal with whatever insecurity, whatever jealousy issue, whatever it is that's going on inside you that thinks that's a healthy boundary, because that is not a healthy boundary. When we're talking about healthy boundaries, we're talking about things that we need to do to make ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally safe. So these are things that reflect your values and yourself and what you need and desire in work, in family, in friends, in romantic relationships, whatever it is. But this is something that is very personal to you. And if there is something bothering you that another person is doing, you may not understand why it bothers you, but you know you don't like it. So before we address that, you need to figure out the why. Why is this bothering you? What does it feel like to you? Figure out what it is you need. So I don't like this behavior. What I would prefer is this behavior. And then it's time to have that conversation with whoever it is, be it your boss, your partner, your family, your friends, whatever it is. And every relationship has boundaries, all of them. And if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, I've never really set boundaries in my relationship, I've never had to do any of that. You probably have, but you've probably done it in a way where you've had a conversation in the beginning or somewhere along the line in the relationship, or when you started the job, when you did these things that said, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want. And the other person said, okay, cool. And you went on. So there wasn't a big conversation that had to be had. It was a mutual respect or a compromise of, hey, I need this much alone time during the week. I need to wind down. I need to come home. And, you know, I used to have that boundary. I've talked about it before, where I need to come home and not talk. Like, I don't care if you're around. You can be in my space. We can do, but I don't want to talk because I've spent all day talking about terrible, terrible things. And I don't want to talk. And it's not about you. It's about me needing that time to wind down. And then we can jump into the conversation. And the person that was there understood that. They're like, okay. And it took a little bit for them because at first they want, you know, we take things personal because why don't you want to talk to me? Like I've waited for you all day and I'm doing these things. I'm excited to talk to you, which is great, but I need downtime. And my commute was very short. So it was that compromise of, okay, just give me like 30 minutes to an hour. And let me wind down, let me change clothes, let me get my bra off, let me just relax for a minute. And then we can jump into relationship. We can jump into conversations. We can talk about our days. We can do those things. And it was a compromise that was made. And that's really, how a healthy boundary is set. It's not necessarily one of these things where you have to draw a hard, fast line. But sometimes you do have to draw a hard, fast line. I have had friends, and I also dated a guy who was late for everything, would show up late. If you were supposed to be there at 7, don't expect him till 7:30. And on some of the friendships that I've had like that, I would always tell them an earlier time, like, well, we're leaving the house at 6:30 when realistically we're not actually leaving the house until 7, but they would get there on time because they would be late. And early is on time. On time is late, and late is unacceptable. This is just one of those things that I've adapted in my life. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who first said it to me, but I firmly believe it because being late to things or showing up right on time to things makes my anxiety higher. Like, I want to be able to go in, get settled. If it's a show or a play or something like that, I want to go find my seat. I want to get my snacks. I want to go to the bathroom. I don't want to be rushed. I hate the feeling of being rushed. So I had the rule where I leave at this time. And there were plenty of times that friends had to take Ubers to meet me, or the person I was dating had to drive themselves or take an Uber to meet me because I left at the time that I said I was leaving. Because for me, that is a value. That is something that I need for me to be comfortable. So in relationships, though, and in the friendships, there's a compromise. If it's something that I plan, if it is a me event, if I bought the tickets, if I'm planning the thing, if this is something I want to do and you say, yeah, I'm in, then I'm leaving at this time and we can leave at this time. And with my friendships, that's the arrangement. If it's a me thing, whoever plans it, we go off of the time frame of who plans it. And it was the same in that relationship and in other relationships. If it's a you thing, we'll go when you say you go. Listen, if your friend said that they were starting at 7 and you don't want to get there until 8:15, cool. They're your friends. This is your thing. This is your concert. This is whatever. I'll go off your time. Though I won't probably enjoy it, but you won't know that. Because I'm going to go off at your time and this is the deal we made. So I'm just going to suck it up and go. But it's because that's important to you. And what's important to me is to be early. So it's a compromise that was made and it works out. My friend group understands. My relationships have always understood that. So it's one of those things that you find how to work that into your life. And a lot of people don't know how to set boundaries. They feel like setting a boundary is selfish almost, and they feel like it's not going to go over well. They feel like someone's going to be mad at them for doing it, and all of those things could be true. Boundaries are a little selfish because they pertain to you and you alone. They don't really involve other people. So if you want to call that selfish, that's selfish. If people get mad at you for setting a boundary, then they probably have loose boundaries, or they probably aren't performing in a healthy way in relationships with people, or they just don't care. Maybe they have codependent personalities. Maybe they have low self-esteem and will take whatever comes. But boundaries are important. And if someone gets pissed at you for setting a boundary, that's a them issue. Because why would someone that cares about you not respect a boundary that you set? And I think that's the important way to really think about it when you're thinking about boundaries is this is important to me. And if this person cares about me, because they say they care about me, they say they love me, they say they want me to be happy, but yet when I set this boundary, they don't respect it and they don't, or they give me a hard time about it. Well, I mean, that's probably something you need to explore in that relationship. And maybe they're just that type of person. Maybe they are someone who won't respect other people's boundaries. Again, that's not a you issue. You have your boundary and you uphold it. And that's why it's important to know what is actually important to you and what you value. Because you may set a boundary that someone crosses and it's not that important to you. So you're like, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But in reality, it does, because it's something that might be important to you. So how do we set boundaries? Well, the first thing you do is figure out what you want and need. Because if you go in and you just say, listen, I don't like it when you do that. And they say, okay, well, what do you want me to do about it? I don't know. Or what are you going to do about it? I don't know. You need a plan. And sometimes we can start with words like, I'm not comfortable with this. And when you do this, I'm going to get off the phone with you. I'm going to leave. I'm going to do whatever it is. And even if you don't necessarily have to give the person the consequences, but you have to give them the boundary. Please don't do that. This isn't working for me. Let's do this instead. I would prefer it if. This is not acceptable when. And then you give whatever example it is, and we move forward. You need to be confident in this. And sometimes it's hard to be confident when you're setting a boundary because you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings. But be confident in it. You want to make that eye contact if you can. Or if it's through text, you want to be very clear. Boundaries are something that need to be hard and fast, kind of like the no trespassing sign. Violators will be prosecuted. It's not, well, sometimes you could do this, but other times I don't like it. Nope, that's not fair because you're setting someone up for failure. So I don't like it when you talk to me like that. I don't like it when we're trying to have a conversation and you're not listening or you're trying to make it about you. So when that happens, I'm going to stop the conversation and we can regroup later. Or when you ask me to work late, I'm going to say no. Or when you text me at night or I get an email after hours, I'm not going to respond to those. I'll respond to those the next morning when I'm working. And all of that, of course, is unless, there's been arrangements or this is something you need to get done. But, for the most part, you can set that boundary and say, listen, I don't work when I'm off. So I don't care how important it is. I'm not going to read my emails at 6:00 at night if I got off at 5. I'm going to turn off those notifications. It's super important. We also want to be respectful when we're setting those boundaries. No yelling, no put downs, no passive aggressiveness. You want to be very clear and state exactly what you need and what might the consequence be. And you want to be respectful. I believe you should go into the conversation with the thinking, well, maybe they don't know. And you're like, well, they know because I've said it this way and I've done this and I've done that. Well, maybe you've been passive aggressive. Maybe you haven't been super clear. And if it's something that could be a deal breaker, you need to be very clear about it. Hey, this is this. And if it happens again, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what I expect. So be clear. It's okay to be firm in your message. And it's okay to have the assertiveness to say what you need, but you do want to be respectful because if you get, passive aggressive again or name calling or you're putting down someone or doing any of those other things, it's not going to be taken well because someone is going to go on the defensive. And you may have those people that just go on the defensive. Very well may, because they don't set good boundaries and they don't respect other people's boundaries. But, you want to plan ahead. You want to be confident going in. Like I said, you want to, if you have to practice in the mirror, practice in the mirror. If you're not great at having those conversations, practice in the mirror and then have that conversation. And it may be a compromise you come to, kind of like the being late to things. I hate being late. But if my partner is okay being late and it's something they planned and it's something they were wanting to do, okay. Then my theory is I just change my thinking to, well, this is his time frame. This is their time frame. This is this friend's time frame. It's not my time frame today, so I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm just going to low man on the totem pole and just YOLO. And if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable. You like it, you like it, I love it. Fine. And we go on that. It's important to have those boundaries, though. And sometimes we do have to set boundaries with siblings, parents, other family members, works, friendships, and that's okay. There are generational curses out there. There are exceptions that families make for someone. I know of some people who have an abusive person in their family, and it does stem from some mental illness, and sometimes it's treated, sometimes it's not, but he's abusive, and he says terrible things and does terrible things, and everybody's like, oh, it's just so-and-so. Oh, it's just this person. Oh, they just get this way. You shouldn't talk to him that way, or you shouldn't do... What? No. Why are we excusing bad behavior? And if I choose not to engage in that bad behavior or not entertain it, that's a me boundary. And sometimes when you do that, family members get mad at you for trying to impose those boundaries, for trying to impose that safety for yourself, physically, mentally, emotional, whatever it is, on this person because of whatever reasons that this person is allowed and tolerated to act that way. No. Set your own boundaries. And if everybody else is okay with it, everybody else is okay with it. You don't have to be. You don't have to follow along with those. And it's hard when you are setting boundaries with family and those types of people because there is emotional guilt that comes with that. There sometimes is this feeling that you are being selfish, or you're hurt their feelings, or they've gotten upset with you, whatever it is. But I promise you, once you set and implement that boundary a few times, that guilt is going to go away because you're going to recognize how much better it feels to not tolerate their bad behavior. And, I started by saying work. Work is an important place to set boundaries. I have a lot of staff right now, and I work in the field of caring and emotional things and taking care of people and helping people and supporting people. And I have learned over the years, because I've been doing this a very long time, that I have to set boundaries, that I have to not take work home with me, that I'm not going to save the world. I'm not going to work harder than the client. I'm not going to do above and beyond when it's unnecessary or unwanted or unwarranted. I don't have a belief that everyone is going to be better. I don't have a belief that I can help them get better, because it's a choice. Getting better is a choice. Now, I will support and do all of the things I can and throw all of the resources at someone that is wanting to get better or is in a state where maybe they don't even recognize that they need to get better. Otherwise, I'm not working harder than they are. And I tell my staff to not work harder than the client. I tell my staff to set those boundaries. And not all of them listen to me. So maybe, I know they listen to this podcast, so maybe hearing it through this method will get to them. And I know in a lot of other workplaces, it's important for everyone to set work boundaries because we work more than we do anything else, right? I mean, most people only work, realistically 8-9 hour days, whatever, but you take it home with you sometimes. And then by the time you get home, you're tired and you spend time with your family for a little while, and then it's bedtime, and then you sleep, and then you get up and you do it again. So most of our time is spent at work. And that's why it's so important to set those boundaries, because burnout is very, very real. And even though the song says it's better to burn out than fade away, I don't truly believe that in a work environment, because they will post your job before your obituary is in the paper. Very few workplaces, unless it's your own and you're the boss and you own it, care enough about their staff to not make them care enough about their staff for them to not be replaceable. Everyone is replaceable. I don't care how valuable you think you are to a company, how hard you work, how much you put into it. You're replaceable for probably someone younger and cheaper. And so it's important to not take that home. I don't check my email or my text. Well, let me rephrase. I do sometimes check my emails when I'm on vacation or off, but I don't respond. I read my text, but I'm probably not going to answer you until the next working day. And it's important to set those boundaries because people will take advantage of how hard you work. And I am not against hard work, but the harder you work, the harder you'll work. And in certain situations, in certain environments, if someone, which I am not that supervisor, but I know a lot of supervisors, and I worked for a lot of different agencies where if they saw that you could do all of the work, they're going to pile all of the work on you, and they're going to let these other people not work. And then you're going to go, but they're not doing anything. I'm doing everything. Well, yeah, because you're doing everything. Stop doing everything. Do your job. Work your wage. If you're trying to grow and climb, great. And when I say work your wage, I'm not saying don't put in effort or don't do extra or don't go above and beyond sometimes. But don't have the expectation that it's always going to be recognized, that it's always going to do better or do good, because it may not. So it's important that you set those boundaries, that you don't let people take advantage of you, because there are plenty of people out there that if you don't have good boundaries, that if you don't say, hey, listen, this is my line, Don't message me after this time. Don't call me after this time. I'm not going to respond. My phone goes on do not disturb. I turn off this notification system at 5 o'clock. I will get back to you at 8 o'clock in the morning when I start my day. They're going to message you at 2 in the morning. I've had clients do it. My phone's on do not disturb though. So I see it when I get up, and then I still don't respond until whatever time it is I'm supposed to start my day. Because that is a boundary that I set for myself, because you have to. And, it's important that you mind that time and you do that for yourself, because you will be exhausted because you're not setting boundaries. And people will always try to cross them. If there are people who are toxic or who aren't healthy, then they're probably going to try to cross your boundaries. They're probably going to try to push it. They're going to see how serious you are about it. And if you hold fast, then it will get better. Because when you're in unhealthy things, just so you know, if it's an unhealthy relationship, if someone's talking to you in a certain way, whatever is happening, which is usually family. I mean, if you're in an unhealthy relationship, whatever, just get out of the relationship. Sometimes you're a little stuck, but that's okay. You can work your way out, start making a plan, do those things. When you set those boundaries, it's kind of like a toddler when you tell them no. They're going to try again, and the fit may get louder and louder and louder. But eventually, they're going to see that they're not going to get their way, and then they stop trying to push it. They may move on to something else. It may switch. And people and relationships and family and work and all those things are the same way. They're going to push and push and push. When you first set that boundary, they're going to see how solid that wall is. When they see that the wall is solid, they stop pushing. They stop trying to knock down that boundary because you're holding fast. And boundary setting is hard in the beginning. It's hard to accept that you need this. It's hard to know other people are being hurt by it, if you will, because they may just be acting like it because now they're throwing a fit because they're not getting their way, which is them, saying, well, you're hurting me with this, or this is unrealistic, whatever it is. But eventually they're going to recognize, and the more you hold fast to that boundary, the better you're going to feel. And it's going to get easier and easier and easier to hold that boundary, because it feels good to have that boundary. It feels good to be like in those conversations, and when someone says something or they start in about your body or your weight or your whatever it is, and you say, nope, I'm not engaging in this, I'm going to go. If you go to dinner at the family's house and, you've said, listen, I don't feel comfortable talking about this. I don't want to have those conversations. I'll come over, but we're not going to talk about this. And you get there and the first thing they do is start talking about it. And you go, okay, it was good to see you guys, but I told you we weren't going to talk about this, so I'm going to go. And you leave. They may throw a little fit. And they may say, well, then don't come over. All right, bet. Threaten me with a good time. Shit, I won't come over then. But most of the time they'll get over it. And if they don't, again, that's a them issue. Because why wouldn't someone that cares about you want to respect that boundary? Why would they not want to? Why would they not want to do something that they know will make you feel better, or stop doing something that is hurting you? And that's the thought process that everyone should have when they set that boundary and people start pushing it. It's not, well, maybe this boundary's unrealistic, or maybe I shouldn't have set a boundary. Maybe I should just let them do what they want. It's, why do these people who say they care about me not want to stop doing something that's hurting me or bothering me? Because that's the bigger issue. So set those boundaries, make them clear. Like, before when we talked about it, no passive aggressive, no hints. Make it very clear what you're wanting. Make it very clear the expectation of how you want something to go and what your reaction might be. And then hold fast to that. And compromise when necessary. But set your boundaries. It's okay. It's okay to have boundaries. And it's okay to uphold them. And it's okay for other people to have a reaction about that because we don't control their reactions. We control us. And working yourself to death and doing things that are out of the scope and allowing people to treat you poorly is hurting ourselves. It's going to wear you out. It's going to make you sick. So it's important that we do what we need to do for ourselves, and we know that we can't control other people's boundaries. And that is the episode. For my producer, Jay Lindley, I'm Leslie Ross. Thank you all for joining us. Please send any questions or comments through the website, heytherapist.com, or email help@heytherapist.com. They may be featured on the show anonymously. Hey Therapist is an SEOK radio production and is for your entertainment purposes only. Thank you for joining us. Make good choices.